Hello, I'm James Dilley. I'm here in the Neolithic Longhouse at Hougue, and I'm going to be making a flint axe head. I've got a piece of flint here, and it's a very big piece of flint. It'd be ideal for making an axe head out of. I'll start off by taking a beach pebble and striking it on the edge, which will send a load of shock through the underside and hopefully give a good flake that will be my starting flake that I can work from. So there we go, that was flake number one. Hopefully that will give some impression that this is not a test of strength or power, it's about accuracy and knowing where to hit the flint and take off a good sized flake. You'll notice that I'm turning the block of flint upside down and working on both sides. So it's a two-faced tool or a bifacial tool. So I'd call that the end of the first stage, really. I've gone all the way around the outside, and you can see where I've taken these large flakes off. This stage is sometimes called the rough out stage. I'm also starting to think about setting up angles. I'm not just hitting and hoping. This is really a challenging craft. It's one of the hardest out there, as the flint can be very unpredictable. This is quite a good bit so far. So in this case, the edge here is quite steep. Hopefully the flake will really travel and splay out and take off all this skin of the flint off, or the cortex, and this is just the contact point between the inner flint and the chalk around it. So I'm going to use a different kind of pebble now. This is much rougher, it's just a piece of granite, but rather than actually striking it, I'm going to rub the edge and abrade it. The reason I'm doing that is to take off that razor sharp fresh edge, because that edge is very thin and brittle, and if I was to hit it on the edge, it would be too fragile to withstand the amount of shock that I'm putting into it. So if you can imagine the edge like the tip of a wedge, that tip is very fragile, but if I grind it back and abrade it, it will be in a much thicker, stronger area, so it can withstand all of the power that I'm putting into it. And there we go. As well as the overall shape, I'm starting to think about the ridge that goes down the back of the axe, the spine. I don't want it to be too thin overall because it will be very weak and brittle. I want it to have a nice equal, proud spine that runs down the back, because when this axe is hitting a tree, it's that has to take an awful lot of the shock from whacking into the tree. And if it's too thin, of course it will break. So it's looking fairly equal at the moment, apart from that little lump at the back. So I'm going to try and send a flake over the top and get rid of it. But I'm going to use a different tool now. Rather than these beach pebbles, I'm going to use this. Now this is an antler hammer. It's sometimes called soft hammers because they're softer than stone. These are particularly good for sending long flakes across the top, because rather than hitting the edge and taking a chunk of stone off with a stone hammer, as I strike the edge, the flint, being hard and sharp, bites into the antler, and that follow through forces a long thin flake to come off. So hopefully that long thin flake will travel across the top and take off some of that material, but we'll soon see. So there we go. A bit like that. And take off all of that ridge and the remains of the cortex. So now far more equal. There's a couple of ridges here and there. Some of those will come off through the grinding process. I've still got a little bit of cortex left, so I've got to take some more of those thin, far-reaching flakes to get rid of the last few bits. So I think that's pretty much done. It looks about right. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect at this stage, as long as there's plenty of shape and mass there, because the next stage will be for me to grind it on a sandstone block, a bit like this one, and put the axe head in place and simply push it back and forth. It's a very long process, and for an axe head like this it could take 50 to 60 hours to turn a flaked bit of flint like this, with a lot of time and effort, into something like this, the finished article. It's exactly the same type of flint, but this has had that extra 50-60 hours work gone into it. It's not like a modern axe where the handle goes through the axe head itself. The axe head in this case has to go through the wooden handle, so it could act like a wedge as it's going back through and into the wooden handle, so it has to be quite a resistant piece. This particular axe has already cut down a couple of trees and it works very well, and fell a tree a similar size to these ones around me in the longhouse in around about 40 to 50 minutes. But for the moment, that's how you make a Neolithic flint axe head.